If you're a woman, please listen up. If you have daughters, if you're a wife, if you ever change your last name, please listen up. The SAVES Act, or the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, has just made it through the House of Representatives. If this act makes it through the Senate, this will be an official law. This act basically means if your last name is not the same as the one on your birth certificate, if your ID does not match, you do not have a right to vote. Over 69 million women in the US have changed their last names. 69 million people will no longer have the right to vote. If this isn't Project 2025 coded, I don't know what is. Men will now be the head of household, meaning their vote is now the only vote that matters. If you go to congress.gov, you'll be able to keep up with the process of the SAVES Act. As American citizens, we should be terrified because this is not only impacting women, but this is impacting people all across the nation.
Good afternoon, mi gente. I've been trying to shorten this video so that I can keep everyone engaged, right? First thing I want to tell you is about the SAVE Act. And I just want you to know that that already passed the House. It's just waiting to get on the floor of the Senate. And if it passes, minorities and women are going to have their votes suppressed. Just so that you know. I also want to make sure that I point out that when it passed in the House, this was back in July. You see that background noise I've been talking about? Because this went under all of our radars, right? But this passed the House of Representatives at an astounding 221 votes to 198. And 5 of our very own Democrats voted for it. And I'm going to give you the names so that you have them, because in mid-elections, you need to remember they voted against your vote. And this is for all women. It doesn't matter who you voted for. It doesn't matter who your political party is. And it doesn't matter what your color is. This will affect you if you fall into this category. So I need you to listen up. I also need you to make sure this video goes viral, because if not, we're going to be struggling at election, either mid-election, special elections, or federal election. We're going to be struggling because people are going to have their votes suppressed. Now, the 5 Democrats that voted for this was Jared Golden out of Maine, Don Davis out of North Carolina. This one blows my mind. Marie Gluesenkamp Perez out of Washington State, and Henry Cuellar out of Texas. They voted for this. Okay? Now you're asking me, well, what does this mean? Right? Make sure you like and comment this video. I'm going to keep saying that because if not, our votes are going to be suppressed. But the SAVE Act, which is a bill that already passed the House, is now waiting to get on the Senate floor. So if it passes the Senate, it is now law. Okay? Now, the first thing it does is that it requires not just minorities, it has upticked what documentation you need to be able to register to vote, which at the end of the day is aimed towards minorities, because minorities are the ones that struggle having original documentation. Now, I don't know why that is, but the statistics says that versus 5% of white people and 10% of minorities, right? We tend to struggle more with getting access to our original birth certificate, being able to apply for a passport because of cost, like a number of reasons. And because of that, we're going to be affected in this more double what our counterparts are going to be. Now, I'm going to throw this up here. This is vitalcheck.org. This is where you get an original birth certificate. And I think at max, it costs about $30. And $15 for the birth certificate, $15 to ship it expeditedly. I think it's what it is, but don't quote me on that. If you do not have your original birth certificate, you need to grab it anyway. And if you do not have a passport, you need to consider applying for one. And I hope that you can afford it, because I know that cost is a big issue because it's not cheap. Now, how does it affect 69 million women? Because if you are married and you have not all your documents say your new married name, you're going to be affected by this bill. If you just got married and you haven't had an opportunity to change all your information, then this is going to affect you in voting. And they didn't tell anybody. Do you understand where I'm going with this? It flew under the radar. So a person gets married, they think they have time. They usually do their credit cards and their bank accounts first. They change their name and the job. But you have to have a birth certificate, your passport, And you have to go through the measures of changing your name everywhere, because not only does your ID have to match that second form of documentation and citizenship, and the things that fall under proving your citizenship also have to have your married name, or you need to not change your name at all. And this is estimated to affect 69 million people in the United States. Now, someone like me that's been married for a very long time, with the exception of my birth certificate, everything else is in my married name, because I've had home so many years to change it all. See where I'm going with that? But those that are just coming up and are just registering to vote or just got married, if there was, for example, Floridians, you have an election coming up, a special election coming up in April that we've been telling you all have to be present for so we can flip that house, right? If your documents if this passes in the Senate and your documents do not match because you are a newlywed, you will not be able to vote in this election, and your vote will be suppressed. Usually, I know over the years, and I could be wrong, that whenever I had something that didn't match my birth certificate and my license, I had my marriage certificate to be the buffer in between. Well, that no longer is going to be acceptable. People, the Senate has 53 seats that are Republican and 47 Democrats. They can afford to lose 5 people, and this will still pass the Senate. And I don't know how, but it is estimated that 69 million women would be affected. I need you to spread this information around. And again, I need you to call your senators and tell them that you do not want the SAVE Act to pass, because it's only going to make it more difficult for...
Someone please tell me I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the SAVES Act was just passed, which is voter registration restrictions. Essentially what it means is if you don't have a passport and a birth certificate where the names match, you can't vote. So if you're, say, a married woman, divorced, or you've just changed your name, or you're trans, non-binary, gender fluid, we can't vote now. I can't vote. I know a lot of people can't even get their passports or names changed. So, cool. I guess we're not voting him out now, huh? Gonna have to take some alternate routes.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a significant piece of legislation making waves across the nation, the Safeguard American Voter Ineligibility Act, commonly known as the SAVE Act. Proponents argue it's essential for election integrity, while critics warn it could disenfranchise millions of eligible voters, particularly married women. Let's break it down.
So I saw a TikTok this morning from Millennial Mia talking about the SAVE Act, which is a proposed bill sitting in committee. It was proposed in last year, and it's been sitting in committee since July. Basically, the SAVE Act says, hey, you can't vote unless the name on your ID matches your birth certificate. Immediately, I thought, so JD Vance can't vote, right? As a family law attorney, I can tell you there might be several lawful reasons why your name doesn't match. Number one usually is marriage, but number two is a lawful name change, like JD Vance. But also, it would affect our transgender community. Depending on how a state processes its adoptions and birth certificates, it could also affect that. These kinds of bills have all kinds of unintended consequences, but I think the intention of this bill is just what Millennial Mia said. It is to roll back the rights of women.
Can I get the 54% of white women that voted for Trump? Can I get y'all down front for a minute? Yeah, the 54% of white women. I want to holler at y'all for a minute. Have y'all heard about this SAVE Act? Have you heard about the SAVE Act? The SAVE Act is either trying to be passed or has been passed. The Republicans are passing this act called the SAVE Act, which states married women who want to vote, if your birth certificate does not match the name you have on your ID today, you can't vote. Did you hear me? I want to say that again. The SAVE Act states that you will need the name on your birth certificate and ID will have to match. Yeah. So while they trying to show up some foolery, are you happy now? Is it great again yet? Asking for a friend. Because as far as I can see, what this SAVE Act is going to do, it's only going to allow the men to vote. And guess who brought that act to the floor? Who did you vote for? Who did you vote for 54%? Those are the people that brought this act to the floor. So now, let me tell you how these white men have made a complete fool out of y'all, for lack of a better phrase right now. What their purpose is, and the whole time, their purpose has been to include you on scaling back the rights of the American people. It has always been you in that number that they have been trying to marginalize, they have been trying to silence, and now they're trying to strip away your voting rights. Not only is it the voting rights that they're going for, women, in case you didn't know, they were after y'all too. Specifically, white women who are not at home having children. White women who are in the corporate world holding those president titles and vice president titles and CEO titles. They want y'all ass out of those offices and back in them houses. And y'all fell for the stupid old okie doke. You thought that they weren't coming after you, that you were gonna benefit from what they were doing because you know y'all next in line behind the white man. You thought y'all would be second in line, reaping the benefits from these horrific laws they're bringing out to take away everybody's rights except for the white man. And because y'all are so used to being so close to power that y'all thought y'all were going to be getting the trickle-down effects of the benefits, when what they were really doing was getting ready to put y'all ass back in them houses with no rights, no voice, no bank account, no credit card, no ability to go out and sustain a life on your own. Because you being able to sustain a life on your own takes away from the white supremacist major goal, which is to keep the white people the majority. And the only way they can do that is y'all stop working all these hours and get y'all asses back in them houses and pop out them damn babies, because you guys are behind. And y'all took y'all lily white asses in those voting booths and you damned yourselves. So y'all are gonna go right back to being at the mercy of your husband. And you know what happens when y'all are at the mercy of your husbands. Happy now? Did getting back at black people, did putting black folks in their place, did getting rid of immigrants, did deporting all the immigrants, is that worth you going back to being your own version of a slave? I hope it is, boo. Because y'all have ushered in this attack on everybody but the white man. Now y'all go back and get y'all asses back in them houses and be the good little white women and pop out their babies they need. That's the only purpose they ever had for y'all asses anyway.
Listen up. They're trying to do it again. Republican-sponsored bill called the SAVE Act HR 22 is the name of the bill, okay? It's already passed the House somehow, unbelievably, and it's waiting to pass the Senate. It is basically saying you cannot vote unless your last name matches the last name that you were born with on your birth certificate. So I just want to throw out some numbers here. 69 million women have changed their last names from marriage when they got married. Under this bill, those women would not be allowed to vote. Okay. It's also saying that you have to vote, register to vote in person. So fuck the elderly, right? Fuck everybody with disabilities. Fuck people with no cars. Driver's license will no longer do to register to vote. It must be a passport or a birth certificate. Now, for all you women who have changed your last names when you got married, forget it, because you're not going to be allowed to vote anyways if this passes. 146 million Americans do not have a passport. 153 million Americans voted in the last election. You do the math. To all the people saying, whose rights are being taken away? Whose rights? Women's, okay, trans women, regular women. Wake up, McFly.
The SAFE Act is being pushed as a way to safeguard American voter inability. But when you actually look at it, the bill does more to suppress votes than protect elections. The biggest issue, it disproportionately impacts married women, particularly those who have changed their last names. Under this law, when someone registers to vote, they must provide proof of US citizenships, such as birth certificates or passports. However, it does not accept marriage certificate as a valid proof of a name change. That means millions of married women who have legally changed their names will suddenly find themselves in a bureaucratic nightmare, needing additional documentation just to exercise their right to vote. Think about it, approximately 69 million women in the US have changed their last names after marriage. If their voter registration name doesn't match their birth certificate exactly, they could be forced to go through additional hoops just to prove they are the same person. And let's be real, how many people keep a certified copy of their marriage certificates on hand? How many older voters who may have married decades ago even know where to find it? This isn't about election security, it's about making it harder for certain groups to vote. And it's not just married women. This law disproportionately affects people of color, low-income voters, and young voters, groups that historically have had difficulty obtaining official government documents. Many older black Americans, for example, were born in an era where birth certificate wasn't always issued for black babies, especially in the South. Immigrants who became naturalized citizens sometimes struggle to obtain or replace lost documents. Even Native Americans who have a unique relationship with federal and state government could be affected if tribal IDs are not considered acceptable proof of citizenship. Then there is the issue of logistics. The bill assumes that every eligible voter has easy to access to documents like a passport or birth certificate, but passport costs money and not everyone has one, especially people who don't travel internationally. Birth certificates are often stored in states' archive, and getting a copy isn't always simple. Some states charge fees and processing times can be long, especially in states with backlog systems. This creates unnecessary barriers for people who have every right to vote. The real question is, why is this necessary? Voter fraud is already extremely rare in the US. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, has compiled days of data on election fraud, and even they admit that the number of documented cases is minuscule compared to the number of votes cast in each election. Most cases involve clerical errors, not international fraud. If widespread voter fraud were actually a problem, lawmakers would be able to provide solid evidence. Instead, they keep pushing vacuum claims about election integrity while drafting laws that make votes harder, not safer. This is a part of a broader pattern of voter suppression. In recent years, we have seen states pass laws that close polling places in predominantly black and Latino neighborhoods, restrict early voting, and make it harder to vote by mail. Now, the SAFE Act is adding yet another hoodoo by making voter registration more complicated than ever. The people pushing this bill know exactly what they are doing. If you make it harder for certain groups to register, fewer of them will vote. That is the goal. And let's talk about who this benefits. The groups most affected by this restriction tend to lean Democratic. Women, Black and Latino voters, younger people, these are demographics that have historically voted for Democratic candidates by making it harder for them to vote. Republicans are staking the deck in their favor. They know they can't win fairly, so they are rigging the system. This isn't about protecting the election, it's about holding onto power. People online are furious. Critics are calling the Save Act the biggest voter suppression attempt in recent history. Many are pointing out that Republicans claim to be the party of family values, yet they are actively making it harder for married women to vote. Others are highlighting how ironic it is that conservatives who always talk about freedom are the same ones pushing laws that strip away basic rights. Some are even comparing this to Jim Crow era literacy tests, which were designed to keep black voters out of the polls. There is also frustration over the media coverage, or lack thereof. While some major outlets have covered the Save Act, it hasn't received nearly as much attention as it should. This is a bill that could impact millions of Americans, yet flying under the radar. People are calling for more awareness, more protests, more pushback against lawmakers who support this legislation. So what can people do? First, spread the word. The more people know about the bill, the harder it will be for lawmakers to quietly push it through. Second, contact representatives. Let them know that this is unacceptable. Third, support organizations fighting voter suppression. Groups like the ACLU and the Brennan Center for Justice are already challenging these kinds of laws in courts. This is about more than one election. If laws like this keep passing, voting will become more and more difficult for everyday Americans. The right to vote is fundamental. When that right is threatened, democracy itself is a risk. So what do you think? Is the Safe Act really about election security, or is it just another attempt at voter suppression? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get this conversation going. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps more people see this. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more updates like this. Also, share this video with your friends and family, especially those who might be affected by this law. Awareness is the key. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.